Hello, everyone. Welcome to my Boomer Buddies podcast, where we tell it like it was and is. I'm beyond excited for this episode. I have two special guests, a returning guest by the name of Dick Beardsley. What a great episode we had last April. And my new Boomer buddy, who has been watching the show and is coming on, is a former teacher at the high school we attended, Wayzata High School, Connie Lewis. Connie, I'll start with you. Welcome to my Boomer Buddies podcast.
It's real different being on the opposite side.
We're going to have fun. This is right up your alley, reminiscing. I know I saw you at a funeral and we reminisced, and I can't wait for your input on Mr. Dick Beardsley. Welcome back, Dick.
Hey, thank you, Rick. And it's so great to have Connie on. I tell you, she's one of my favorite people in the world ever since in high school and ever since 50 years after I graduated. Her support and everything over the years has just been, I can't even express it enough how thankful I am for that. So great to have you on here, Connie.
I'm excited to be here.
Now, Connie is interesting on many levels. You must have been about 15 when you were a teacher.
I know it.
You and Karen Mishmash, Sue Jewell, some of the teachers, and I get the audience watching and listening out there. You didn't all go to our high school, but you can relate to some of the stories that we're going to talk about today. And we are going to cover an artist that we all like, John Denver, and he was really big back in the 70s when we were doing this thing, and Connie was probably a pretty new teacher at that time.
I started teaching in 1970. Karen Mismash Lennon and I started in 1970, and then Sue Jewell started in 71.
Okay, and you are all pretty tight to this day.
We are. We see each other every Friday.
That's so neat.
Karen and I retired in 2004, and there's a group of 9 of us who get together every Friday. And we've missed very few Fridays.
I know, I see some of your pictures, Connie, and it's so neat to look and see you and Sue Jewell and some of the other teachers that I had back then. That's so cool that you guys get together like that.
Your former coach, Gary Riedel?
Yes, my gosh. I haven't seen Gary, probably since I graduated.
Mark Terrace.
Yes.
And anybody who runs, Bill Miles.
Yes. Yeah, that's awesome.
Connie, why don't you give a little background on Dick Beardsley? He's kind of a big deal.
I had the privilege of being the person who spoke about Dick when he was inducted as a Wayzata High School Distinguished Alumni. And, you behind me in my bookshelf, I've got his 2 books. So there's a wealth of information there. But I have loved knowing Dick as a good friend throughout the years. There is something about his just absolute enthusiasm that is so catchy. And when I think about the struggles that he has overcome, in just knowing that I was going to be with the 2 of you today, I went back and looked at the document that I had done about Dick, and just reading about that horrible farm accident. I grew up on a farm, and I know how cautious and careful you have to be, and the potential of horrible things to happen with farm accidents. But to come back after all those different kinds of things and to be the inspiration to so many people for how you can do it. You can overcome these kinds of things. And in my little document there, I tell a few little stories about some of Dick's shoes and things. But yeah, there's some funny stories in there, right, Dick?
And I tell you, let's just say this. I was honored to get this Distinguished Alumni Award, and it sure wasn't for my work in the classroom. I was, I can still remember in the fall, if it was a beautiful fall day, I'd be daydreaming about wanting to be out and hunting ducks or something like that. And I can still remember when I was a senior, Jack Osberg was my science teacher, and Jack and I were good friends, and or Mr. Osberg I still call him that, and he'd say, like in the fall, he'd go, "Hey Dick, it's going to be a nice day tomorrow. Maybe we should go hunting." So he'd give the class an assignment, and him and I would sneak out the back door and go hunting. And in the spring, he'd go, "Hey, Dick, it's going to be nice tomorrow. Bring your boat to school, and after I give an assignment, we'll sneak out the back door and go fishing." So a lot of good memories from back then, I'm telling you.
And it's stories like that we were such good friends in the early 70s, and the school was a lot different. There were
Yes.
elements of time to be pushing forward academically while at the same time really having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And my husband, Jim Lewis, was just absolutely loved, making bets with Dick.
My gosh, I can't tell you how many bets we made about fishing. I don't think either one of us ever paid each other anything, but we always made bets.
You finally did pay off a $5 bet. You had come to the high school one time to talk to the cross-country kids.
Yes.
You were running across the parking lot as I was leaving. You had this piece of paper you pulled out of your pocket, wrote a little note, and gave me a $5 bill for Jim. So you did pay one off.
Goodness. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, boy, Jim loved to fish, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he sure did.
Well, some other things about Dick is, I don't know if you listeners and viewers out there remember or know, that he won the inaugural London Marathon. You came across the finish line at the same time as
Inge Simonson from Norway. And, my grandma on my mom's side came to Minnesota from Norway. So we had this immediate connection afterwards, and we've remained great friends. That was 45 years ago, coming up the end of March. And so they usually bring us, Inge and his family and me and my family, back about every 5 years. We both ran 2 hours, 11 minutes, and 48 seconds that day. 45 years ago. It's the slowest winning time ever at the London Marathon, but because we were the first winners, they keep bringing us back all the time. So it's a lot of fun.
My favorite marathon stories is when you ran 2:09 up in Duluth. The whole scenario about that, your preparation for that is just...
Yeah, that I still sometimes, for some reason, I'll think about that and all the goofy things I did leading up to that race, and I just start chuckling at to myself. It's lots of good memories, that's for sure.
Good memories.
Now, Dick, obviously, you won the award as being one of the best ever to come out of Wayzata. And what lofted you all the way to go to marathons?
I wasn't a very good high school runner, and I never made it to a state meet in cross country or track, and I didn't even run track. I remember Ward Schuster, Mr. Schuster, wanted to know if I was coming out for the track team. So I ran cross country the fall of 1973, my first time, and then that following spring, he asked, "You're coming out for track, aren't you?" And I go, back then we had a dirt track there at Wayzata High School. And I go, track. I go, "You mean that dirt road you run around that's around the football field?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "No." I go, "That's fishing season." So I didn't go out. And then that following fall, I went out. I was a senior then, the fall of '74. And so I went out for cross country. And I was better than I was the year before, but I still didn't qualify for the state meet. But I'd kind of fallen in love with it. And then I went out for track and that following spring. How I got into marathoning, it seemed like, in high school I ran the mile and the 2 mile. That was as far as you could run in track. And then in cross country I ran 3 miles. But it seemed like the further I ran, the better I was. I didn't have a lot of speed, but I could hold a pretty fast pace for a little longer. So then when I got into college, I could run up to 10,000 meters in track, and I seemed to do a little bit better. And so then I decided, well, I'm going to try a marathon. And the first 2 I ran were not very successful, and I swore I'd never do another one. But once I figured out that you got to run more than 6 or 7 miles for your long run for a marathon, that helped quite a bit.
So to me, it just blows my mind that Dick Beardsley, I walked the halls with Dick Beardsley, and, years later, you go off and do your own thing, and Dick won the London Marathon? Cool. How did you handle all of that? I don't want to call it fame, but...
Well, I tell you, I said this from the very beginning. Once I started getting a little bit successful with my running, people would try to put me up on a pedestal, and I would never allow that to happen.
It's not you.
Yeah, because maybe I could put one foot in front of the other faster than somebody else. Rick, you can do something, and Connie, you can do something a lot better than I can. And I always told myself, and I told my son Andy when he was alive, and I've told multiple young people over the years, no matter how successful you become, you always got to be humble. And I've always tried to go with that philosophy. And at almost 70 years old now, I'm not sure not going to change any of that. That's for sure. So I was very blessed, and I had good people. Gary Riedel, Connie had mentioned, he was my first coach I ever had in running. I don't think Gary even ran back then, but you know what? He made it fun. We didn't have a lot of kids out for the team, so nobody got cut, and so we all got to run. And then George Ross, who was a year in front of me, Connie knows the Rosses, and George was a stud, and him and I were like best friends in school. And even though he was a year in front of me, and his dad Joe was, even after George graduated, Joe came to all my meets. I remember him going out in their pasture behind their house, and he'd tie me. He had a little quarter-mile loop he had back with the cows and stuff, and he'd tie me back there. And him and Carol were just, well, they were my godparents, and they were like a family to me growing up. So and each coach I had along the way kind of took me to another level, and so I just owe a lot to the people that helped me get to where I was able to get to. That's for sure.
I saw George Ross at the high school reunion. He was there with his wife,
Sue, yeah,
who was a classmate of ours.
right.
And he was very proud of you, Dick.
Well, in fact, George just sent me a note here a couple weeks ago. He'd heard about some things happening in my life, and so he just wanted to kind of lend his support, and that was very, very kind of him. We used to be glued at the hip. Honest to gosh, we were glued at the hip. He kind of went his way, and I kind of went my way. But when we were in high school, before either one of us, I think, even had girlfriends, we said, when we get married, George, you're going to be my best man, and I'm going to be your best man, and we kept that vow right to the end, and him and Sue have been together. It's got to be 45 plus years now.
Dick talked his success in marathon running is something that's a high standard to achieve, but he also does speaking engagements, and I think that with Dick, with your authenticity and how you interact, and you're so humble, you have an ability of being able to inspire people in a way that any of the times that you can read any of the evaluations of the presentations that he has made, whether it's to high school groups or business groups or anybody in between there, you hook people's interests.
Well, thank you, Connie. People say, "Oh, Dick, you're such a good speaker," and I go, "No, I'm not." I said, "I'm a good storyteller," and and that's what I use. I'm different from probably a lot of other speakers because I use life stories, things that have happened to me, but they might have not happened to Connie or to Rick, but they can relate to them because there's something that actually happens. It's not something made up. And I just try to use those to hopefully get people through some tough times they might be going through, because we all go through them, that's for sure.
Amen. You've always been an inspiration. Your farm accident and getting through addiction,
Yep.
killers, and you mentioned the loss of your son, and it always humbles me inside to see all the heck you've gone through in your life, and then you draw on that to inspire others. And like you said, people don't have to go through what you did exactly, but they can relate to it and draw from that, and that's a gift you have.
Well, Rick, I couldn't do it without people that are in my lives like you and Connie and Sue Jewell and so many other people. I don't even want to leave anybody out, but the support I've received from so many people over the years, back then, in the middle, and now, it's just, I don't know what I would do without those people, because it keeps me wanting to get up every morning and face the day and face the challenges, and I can't thank everybody enough for all of that, honestly.
We're here, My Boomer Buddies podcast. Special guest today, Mr. Dick Beardsley, multi-talented in many areas. And of course, we have Connie Lewis. She's so special. And Connie, do you look at us like your kids in a way, or your little brothers?
I still look at you folks as still being the kids, high school. I don't understand how you got to be, like Dick mentioned, he's almost 70, and it's like, wait a minute, you should be like about 17.
That's how I act most of the time.
My wife will say that I still am a teenager. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, I think that the special relationship that we often talk about that retired educators, special relationships that we were able to develop with students. There was a mutual respect and a mutual friendship.
Yes.
In speaking with other people, like former students who will go to college and be talking about their teachers, and their roommates and friends will say, "That was your teacher?" Funny story about my husband, Jim. There's a former student who had a picture of Jim framed in his dorm room, and people would ask him, "Oh, is that your dad?" And he'd say, "No, that's my history teacher." "Why do you have a picture of your history teacher?" And he said, "He's my conscience."
But Connie, that's how it was. So maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's different or the same now, but I don't think it is. Back then, you were respectful of your teachers. You called them Mr. or Mrs. and have that teacher relationship, but then also a friendship, and to have it last as long as they have is pretty amazing.
It really is. Yeah, it really is.
Well, your husband, Mr. Lewis, I still say.
I know.
He also umpired. I've told this story to you before, but he was umpiring a game, and there's a player from the other team. I think it was Hopkins Eisenhower. I know all you viewers and listeners out there, you don't know what I'm talking about, but it was one of the high schools in our league. And I played second base. This person was stealing or trying to steal second, and I covered second. Howie Crawford threw a perfect throw, and it was way ahead of the runner. The runner saw that he was going to be out by quite a bit. He dove feet first right into my thigh.
Ooh.
And, blood all over, put a hole in my pants. And I was standing over him looking down, and your husband Jim came out from behind home plate, and he goes, "You're out and you're out." He threw him out of the game for diving. And my reaction was, he wrecked the best pants on the team. They fit perfect.
That's a great story.
To this day, Dick and Connie, I still have a scar. I never got stitches.
Oh.
But yeah, he was quite a guy. And he
Absolutely.
And another guy that kind of was like your husband, but only junior, he was a student, was Rick Casey. Rick Casey had a lot of attributes of your husband, Jim Lewis. And he always fit in with the older crowd. And I do have a picture I'm going to drop in now of Rick Casey along with you and Karen Mishmash and Sue was in there. And I think the
Special relationship with all of us.
Yeah, and I was really great friends with him, grew up with him, and he was ahead of me and I looked up to him. So shout out to Rick Casey.
Absolutely.
Now, viewers out there and listeners, we're going to talk now a little bit about somebody musically that we all like by the name of John Denver. And I'll just throw out some of the songs John Denver had. He actually wrote a song called Leaving on a Jet Plane in 1966. And you know who recorded that before him, right?
Wasn't it Peter, Paul, and Mary?
Yes.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, but it was his song though, right?
He wrote it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, that's very good, Dick. And then in 71, he had Take Me Home, Country Roads.
Love that song.
And in 74, Sunshine on My Shoulders.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Rick, let me interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
So when I knew this was coming up, I started listening to all these John Denver songs. Gosh dang, half of them make me cry because of what's been going on. It brought back so many good memories because he was big when we were in high school.
Do a rundown here, and then I'm going to get your reactions
Okay.
and memories you have. And anybody watching and listening, I want you to comment below. I'll share it with Dick and Connie, and it's just so relatable. And let me just say this, Dick. John Denver was a folksy guy. Anybody here of us three that's a folksy guy? Dick Beardsley, that's you. You guys are cut from the same cloth. Okay, 74, there was Sunshine on My Shoulder. 72, 73, right on the edge there, it was Rocky Mountain High, which I love that song.
Yeah.
Annie's song.
Great song.
There's some tidbits about that I'll come back to in a little bit here. 74, Back Home Again.
Love that song.
Sweet Surrender in 75. In 75 also, Thank God I'm a Country Boy. Another one, 75, is I'm Sorry. That was number one, as was Annie. Let's see, and Sunshine on My Shoulder was number one before that also. And then in 75, Calypso. He had quite a year in our senior year.
My goodness.
75 into 76, Fly Away. Backup vocal was Olivia Newton-John. So now what I'm gonna say, which ones of those songs were your favorite? And you can't say all of them. I know you probably liked all of them, but pick out a couple and then any memories that you associate.
Rick, I got one that I don't think you mentioned, but the poems, prayers, and promises.
There's more. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
more.
that was one of my favorites, and probably one that maybe you've never heard this one, but it's one of my all-time favorites. And I was listening to it yesterday, and it just reminds me of a kid being at my grandma's. But it was called Grandma's Feather Bed.
I don't remember that one.
I don't know that one either.
We're done here and listen to it. It's pretty fun. It's a funny song.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. Grandma's Feather Bed. See, that's what's cool. You don't have to have a hit song by him or any of your favorite artists. Get album cuts that mean a lot to you. I was a big Moody Blues guy, and that stuff, that hit me inside eternally.
And with John Denver, he had so many bangers. I mean, honestly, it's like hard to pick what's your favorite because he's got so many. What an incredible talent and songwriter he was,
Yes.
let alone being a singer.
And there's so many times that when I listen to one of his songs, like memories will come back. One of
Yeah.
is Take Me Home Country Roads. And I know it wasn't written in West Virginia, and many of the places are in Virginia itself, but I just love driving through. I like car trips, and I like driving through West Virginia and thinking about all of the special meanings that has, that you can be transported back to different eras of your life based on songs that you are listening to.
Yes, absolutely.
And Connie, recently my wife and I went to North Carolina in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and we're standing up on, I think it was Mitchell's Mountain or something, and Blue Ridge Mountains right there. And what comes into my head?
Of course.
Blue Ridge Mountains. Even though it was West Virginia in the song, I was still in that area.
Yeah.
And that translated. Oh, that was fun.
And Rick, wasn't his first wife, was it Annie? Wasn't she from St. Peter, Minnesota, I think?
I got some tidbits here.
Yeah.
What a transition you can make, Dick. You do have a podcast, don't you? Yeah, that's true, Dick. He was in the Chad Mitchell Trio, and that was 65 to 68. And they were doing a show in St. Peter. What is that,
Gustavus Adolphus.
Thank you. Gustavus Adolphus, and guess who was there? Annie. Annie was there, and a year later they connected and ended up, being together, and they lived in Edina for a couple of years. And he wrote 3 of his albums in an apartment in Edina, Minnesota.
Really?
Viewers and listeners, all 3 of us are out of the Twin Cities area. Dick's up in Bemidji now, and Connie, we're in Plymouth, right? Both of us. But yeah, he lived here for a while. And I remember there was a show that Bill Carlson, a local celebrity, had, and I remember as a kid seeing John Denver on that show with Bill Carlson. And yeah, he was kind of the hip guy. Yeah, 3 albums. The number 1 single, Sunshine on My Shoulder, was written in that apartment in Edina, Minnesota.
Wow.
Yeah.
And wasn't it a gloomy, wintry kind of time, that it seemed to me that I had once read something about, that he sort of needed the thought of sunshine to put up with gloomy winter days.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing what inspires people to do whatever they do? The creative people. I'm so jealous for them.
Rick, that's, Connie had mentioned about I do a little songwriting and stuff. And if you said to me, Dick, write me a song, it's probably not going to happen. But certain things in my life would happen. And then for some reason I get these words into my head. And so I pick up my guitar that my mom got me when I was 12 years old. I know like 4 or 5 chords, but with those 4 or 5 chords, you can play about every song in the world. And I'll just start strumming it. And next thing I know, a tune I get a tune going on the guitar, and I mean, I'm nothing like John Denver, believe me, but it's sometimes like John Denver, I think things would just pop into his head or a certain situation, all of a sudden these words just kind of come to and fro.
The folksiness of him coming through in his art. Dick, surprised, but I shouldn't be, that you are a musician too, and you
I
write
wouldn't
songs.
say a musician.
Connie, when you said that earlier, it was like, I didn't know that.
Right now, I got my guitar right over here. In fact, just before we got on, I was kind of messing around with it a little bit.
Well, go get it. Go get that guitar. Let's go.
And I love when people can express themselves through words and music, and it's truly just a gift and a talent.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dick Denver.
Denver, what do you want to hear? A song?
What's on your heart right now? What's on your mind?
Well, okay, so I lost my son Andy 10 years ago this past October, and on February 3rd, it would be his 42nd birthday. So about a week or 10 days after he died, I was still, kind of a mess. And something happened, and I wrote a song about it. You want me to play that one?
I'd love to hear it.
Okay. I can't recall one day in my life when I felt as sad as I did that night. I felt like I could lay down and get up no more. It's the saddest feeling I never felt before. Thought about all those pills I took years before. How they made me feel so fuzzy and warm. But that's not the way. I've worked too hard through the days, living drug-free. That's the way for me. And then I asked myself, I said, Dick, where do you go from here? And then I turned and I looked in the mirror. I saw a crying face looking back at me. I looked up to the Lord. Could you help me, please? Look back at that mirror, looking back at me. It was my sweet boy, my son Andy. He said, Pop, don't cry. I'm doing just fine. I'm here with the Lord. I got peace of mind. And that's when I knew that I'm gonna be okay, but I'm sure gonna miss my boy all the rest of my days.
Another layer from you. It came from your heart, and that was a heartfelt song. I mean, sorry, I'm stunned. I'm
sorry I can't play the guitar better and sing better, but I do like to just pick it up and mess around with it a little bit. But again, I couldn't write your song if you asked me to, but if certain things happen, sometimes they just kind of come out. So thanks for letting me share that.
I'm glad you shared it. Thank you. That was wonderful, beautiful, unexpected, and wow, such talent.
Maybe I should sing you one that's a little funnier. It's about a pig I once raised. Do you want to hear it? I was in 4-H, the Wayzata Live Wires. And I raised, got a real significant title to the song. It's called My Pig. When I was just a kid, I once raised me a pig. Showed him at the 4-H county fair. I won a blue ribbon once, but I was such a dunce, 'cause then I had to sell my pig at the county fair. There were lots of bidders, but I'm no quitter. I bid 'em up real high, but I got outbid twice. Now my little piggy's in the local grocery store, near the meat department, near the back door, all because I had to sell my pig at the county fair. The old man that bought my pig, I tried to buy it back from him. He said, no way, no how. That's why I bought it from you. I'm gonna have a barbecue all because I had to sell my pig at the county fair. There were lots of bidders, but you know I'm no quitter. I bid 'em up real high, but I got outbid twice. Now my little piggy's in the local grocery store in the meat department near the back door, all because I had to sell my pig at the county fair. Thought about trying it again, and then I thought about my pig and how it looked me in the eyes. I can't do this no more. I'm walking out that door, gonna save my next little piggy's life. There are lots of bidders, but you know I'm no quitter. I bid 'em up real high, but I got outbid twice. Now my little piggy's in the local grocery store in the meat department near the back door, all because I had to sell my pig at the county fair. In downtown Wayzata, what was it called? Lakeside Grocery. It was an old-fashioned grocery store or lake something, and that's where most of my pig ended up.
We had our hearts just pulled out, and now it's satire, fun, country song. I'm so impressed with you, Dick.
Well, it's fun. I do enjoy this. I just wish I could play better, but it is what it is. At my age, my fingers won't move as much as I wish they would, but
Sure.
it's fun.
I need a promise from you. When I bring my boys up there to fish,
Yeah,
will you break that guitar out?
absolutely. If you want it.
Please do that. Connie, what words do you have right now?
Kind of speechless, but I think, you look at the corollary between Dick and John Denver. There are those songs that as the artist, you're pouring out your heart. As the person listening, you're caught in the sentimental element of it. And to have that range from being able to have music be the catharsis for getting through something difficult, and also to have the satire and the humor at the other end.
I've got lots more in between too, so.
And I looked at John Denver, and he did Thank God I'm a Country Boy on one end, and then he did duets with Placido Domingo.
Right.
And it's like, and everything in between.
Viewers and listeners, please comment. You got to comment. That was so unexpected and cool. But I'm pleased. I'm so pleased that you did that. But I'd love to hear comments. Dick and Connie, this has been so wonderful.
Well, thank you for having me on, and especially having me on with Connie, one of my favorite people in the world. So thank you, Rick.
Well, I don't want to cut Connie short here because she's got a lot of accomplishments too. We're going to have another show that we do. But Connie, you do so much with your heritage. And my wife is Norwegian.
Oh.
What do you call that? Scrawling, or it's
The painting?
yeah, the painting on the furniture and
Rosemalling.
rosemalling. Yeah.
There are so many Nordic arts, the rosemalling, and you see things like behind me on my, I've had to move books off the bookshelf in order for all the various things that I have.
Yeah, you have a lot of talents, and you know what? You were so beloved as a teacher. I didn't have you as a teacher, but I knew who you were, and I did have your husband for a teacher. You've always been so beloved by the students at Wayzata, and all these years later,
I know.
plus years, and here we are.
And one of the things that I also want to bring up is that, that sense of family that we had. I have loved, Rick, that I knew you and your siblings.
Yeah.
And your dad worked at the high school, and he was so beloved when he worked at the high school. And he used to always say that the reason why he was successful at what he did was because he had that training of raising all you kids.
I'm the oldest. I was the experiment.
There you go. Me too.
He had this 67 Mustang that he treasured. And because he befriended a lot of kids at the high school, he was like a hall monitor and study hall teacher, or whatever you call it. He let a couple of kids take that Mustang to prom.
Wow.
Forgot about that.
Yeah,
Oh,
and I'm like,
wow.
what are you doing, Dad? They're good kids,
And he had that ability of connecting with kids in a way that wasn't confrontational and could intervene in ways that weren't upsetting and unsettling. And then your mom also did some subbing at the high school, so got to know her. And then with Dick, I was such good friends with Joe and Carol Ross.
Right.
So maintained friendship with Carol and know how much family, meant, because you are a part of their family. And
Yeah, they were big. They helped me through some tough times growing up with what was happening at home with my parents and stuff. So, like I said, I owe a lot to a lot of people, and I can't thank everybody enough. That's for sure.
Well, just by nature, there's going to be a lot of Wayzata people here because you guys are going to share this, right? And just people that may not have been Wayzata people. If you relate to this, go ahead, share, like, and subscribe to the channel. I do this for fun. I love pulling in new people all the time. And Dick, you're not new, you're a repeat, but Connie, I got you now. You're going to be on here pretty regular, and I want to thank all my boomer buddies that helped me out. It's just a little thing of love that I do here. I don't get monetized, so go ahead, share, like, subscribe. Connie Lewis, Dick Beardsley, it's an honor to have you on the show, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
the fact that you're doing music of an era that I lived through. I graduated from high school in 1966, so it's just listening to your podcast, I get transported back to special memories throughout the years.
That's the goal.
Yeah, and Rick, keep up the great work. It's a great podcast you do, and I know you enjoy doing it. I can tell that. You can just tell when I'm on with you that you just love what you're doing. And give Sharon my best, and we'll hopefully get up fishing here one of these days.
Yeah, maybe February. Who knows?
You bet. Yeah, Connie.
Bye. Good to see you guys.
For Connie Lewis, Dick Beardsley, I'm Rick Reed, My Boomer Buddies podcast. Thanks for joining us. Until next time.
We'll see you
Around the block.
Hot dog! I knew this would be epic.
Oh, that was so much fun.